I used to think proud people were the loud ones, the arrogant ones, the ones who walked into rooms like they owned them and couldn't take a correction without a fight. I was wrong, because the most dangerous form of pride I ever encountered was inside me. And it wasn't loud at all. It was quiet. It was spiritual. It wore the right words, showed up to the right places, and looked from every angle like devotion. And when God finally showed me what it actually was, I didn't want to believe it. Welcome back. If you're new here, stick around, because we don't do surface level faith on this channel. We go to the places that are uncomfortable, because that's usually where the real growth is hiding. Today I want to share something personal, something God showed me about pride that genuinely shocked me, not because it was dramatic, but because it was so close, so hidden, so dressed up in spirituality that I almost missed it completely. And I think a lot of you are going to see yourself in this. So let's go. Section 1. The moment it hit me. There was a season in my life where I was doing everything right, at least on the outside. I was consistent in prayer. I was reading scripture. I was serving. I was showing up. By every visible measure, I looked like someone who was walking closely with God. But underneath all of that, something wasn't right. I couldn't name it. I just knew there was this quiet tension I kept running from. A subtle resistance every time someone challenged me spiritually. A low-grade irritation when someone else was recognized or promoted. A very specific kind of prayer that was always about how much I understood, how far I'd come, how faithful I'd been. And then one day, not in a dramatic vision, not with thunder and lightning, just in a quiet moment of stillness, I felt God surface a question in my spirit. Who are you doing this for? And I went cold, because the honest answer wasn't what I wanted it to be. Section 2. What pride actually is. Here's where most teaching on pride gets it wrong. It starts and ends with the obvious version. The braggart, the narcissist, the person who can't admit they made a mistake. But pride in its rawest form isn't about volume, it's about center. Pride is simply this: placing yourself at the center of the story that belongs to God. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sits quietly in a church pew with perfectly folded hands and a heart that is more concerned with being seen as humble than with actually being humble. That's the version nobody warns you about. C.S. Lewis, one of the most brilliant theological minds of the last century, said that pride is the complete anti-God state of mind. Not because proud people are monsters, but because pride, by its very nature, looks inward and upward at self, rather than upward at God. And here's what makes it so slippery. Pride doesn't feel like pride, from the inside. From the inside, it feels like conviction, it feels like standards, it feels like knowing what's right. That's exactly what makes it so dangerous. Section 3. Pride, disguised as spirituality. Let me describe something and tell me if it sounds familiar. A person who corrects others' theology, not to help them, but to feel superior. A worshipper who can't fully enter worship when they're not on the platform. Someone who gives generously, but feels quietly resentful when it's not acknowledged. A prayer warrior who privately compares their prayer life to others and walks away, satisfied. None of these people think of themselves as proud. Every single one of them would tell you they're just trying to be faithful. This is pride disguised as spirituality, and it is one of the most common, most overlooked conditions in the church today. Here's how to recognize it. It usually shows up in one of three ways. First, spiritual comparison. This is when your faith becomes a measuring stick, not to measure your growth, but to measure your position relative to others. You're not asking, am I growing closer to God? You're asking, am I more mature than them? That competitive undercurrent, that's pride. Second, unteachability dressed as discernment. This is the person who can never receive a word, correction or challenge from anyone because they've decided they've heard from God and that settles it. Now, true discernment is a gift, but when discernment means you never have to be accountable, never have to be wrong, never have to sit under anyone's authority, that's not discernment. That's pride, with a Bible verse on top of it. Third, performing devotion rather than living it. When your spiritual life is healthiest, when others can see it and suffers when no one is watching, that tells you who the audience really is. God sees in secret. Pride needs a crowd. Section 4. What God showed me personally when God surfaced that question in me. Who are you doing this for? I spent a long time trying to answer it the right way, and that itself was pride. I wanted to craft the right response to God's conviction, because I didn't want to fully sit in the discomfort of the real one. But eventually I had to be honest. Some of what I called faithfulness was actually a performance. I wanted to be known as someone who prayed, not just someone who prayed. I wanted my spiritual growth to be visible, acknowledged, respected, maybe even admired. And the truly humbling part, I had been doing it for so long that I couldn't tell anymore where the genuine devotion ended and the performance began. It had all blurred together. What God showed me in that season was this: pride doesn't just corrupt bad things, it corrupts good things. It gets into your worship, your serving, your praying, your giving, and turns something that was meant to be an offering into a resume. And he wasn't angry about it. That's what shocked me most. There was no condemnation in that moment. Just an invitation. Come back. Let this be between us again. Stop performing for an audience that was never meant to be watching. That moment wrecked me in the best possible way. Section 5. How pride blocks your breakthrough. Here's the practical reality, and I need you to hear this clearly. Pride doesn't just damage your character, it actively resists the very things you're praying for. Scripture is unambiguous. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. That word resists in the original language is strong. It means to oppose, to push back against. God himself takes an active position against pride, not because he's harsh, but because pride, left unchecked, will destroy you. Think about it. Breakthrough almost always requires surrender. Surrender of your timeline, your methods, your understanding, your way. Pride refuses to surrender. It negotiates. It makes conditions. It says, I'll trust you, God, but not with this part. That's not faith. That's control wearing a faith costume. And the areas where you're most resistant to being wrong, most resistant to being corrected, most resistant to waiting, those are almost always the areas where pride has dug in the deepest. And not coincidentally, they're usually the exact areas where your breakthrough hasn't come yet. I'll be honest with you. This is one of the most ongoing works God has done in my life. It's not a one-time moment. Pride is subtle, and it comes back in new forms, wearing new outfits. But awareness is the beginning of everything. And I hope today, something in this video created a moment of honest awareness for you. Because the version of you that God is calling forward, it doesn't have room for the weight of pride. And letting it go isn't losing something, it's finally becoming free. Share this with someone who's ready to go deeper. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of conversation. And I'll see you in the next one.